Juan makes sure the gate is properly closed after letting us in. He and his family of 6 live in San Pedro Sula, Latin America's most dangerous city. We have changed their names to protect them. All 6 tried to leave Honduras. They fled to the US because every day here is a fight for survival. Everyone here thinks only about leaving, he says. Everyone wants to get to the USA to move a step forward in their lives. I want the best for my 4 children, and here they will have no life chances. Here in the poor quarters, the Mara death squads rule, brutal criminal street gangs. They extort money from the poorest and kill those who refuse to pay. They once shot at Leila, Juan's wife, in front of her children. Now my daughter often wakes up at night, she says, and I have to hold her. She calls out, "Mama, they want to kill you." She's not sleeping well. She's only 2, and she saw everything. So they packed their few belongings, borrowed some money, and set off as undocumented migrants on the 3,000-kilometer journey through Mexico. Then the police stopped their bus, arrested the family and sent them back. But Laura, their 12-year-old daughter, was on another bus. My parents were in the bus behind ours, Laura says. I waited at the next stop, but they didn't come. Just some other people. I thought they'd left me on purpose. Back in Honduras, Laura's parents were worried sick about their daughter for 2 weeks, until Laura too was arrested and sent home. The police seldom help the residents here. Many are in the pay of the Mara. Here you either cash in or you pay up, or you get murdered or you leave town. In some quarters, half of the houses are empty and have been looted. People are leaving the city in droves. Some soldiers show us a district that they have, as they put it, cleansed. They moved into the area to drive out the Mara. With security apparently re-established for the first time in years, the residents feel confident enough to stand around outside their homes. Now 400 police are guarding 500 residents, and yet a few streets away the criminals are still roaming at will. You have to imagine, this army officer says, that last month there were 15 gang members on every corner here, with Kalashnikovs and pistols. And they would take money and valuables off people. No one here dared to even stick their head out the window. The children couldn't play outside because this was the center of the terror operation. Mayor Armando Calidonio is running for re-election. His campaign posters say life is good in San Pedro Sula. He denies that the city is ruled by fear. People are always criticizing everything, he says. There are a few problems in Honduras, in San Pedro Sula too, but it's not that extreme. If it was, we wouldn't be here. We soon find out how extreme things really are when we talk to some of the killers. We meet 4 Mara gang members who only agree to talk to us because they want out. We were expecting brutal thugs covered in tattoos. Instead, we see 4 shy youths between 15 and 18 years old. But until recently, these youngsters were feared. Murder is part of the routine here, one of them tells us. Gun battles, people fleeing. You're always trying to stay alive yourself. There are Maras who control areas, take money and keep other thieves away. And there are Maras who are only interested in making a fast buck. They threaten the people in the quarters to make them pay. The Maras don't ask twice. If you can't pay, it's wise to get out of town. But that's not cheap either. Fleeing means dealing with other criminals who demand payment to cross their territory. Many people get into debt to employ so-called coyotes, people traffickers who promise migrants passage across every border between Honduras and the US for a fee of up to $10,000. One coyote is willing to speak to us. He guides us to the meeting by his cell phone. He says anyone who pays him will be waved through by bribed border guards. His service includes false papers, food, lodgings, and the car journey across Central America. It's getting harder to bring people across, he says, because the border controls are getting tighter and tighter. There isn't a single coyote who doesn't work with organized criminals. If you don't pay the cartels, they don't let you pass. The cartels control everything in Latin America, the drugs and the human trafficking trade. It's a dangerous journey. The route usually runs through Guatemala to Mexico. There, just across the Mexican border, most migrants get on the Beast, a goods train that travels across Mexico into the US. The migrants live in constant fear of the immigration authorities. But corrupt police and criminal gangs are much more dangerous. It usually takes weeks for the migrants to arrive in the north. Then their dream is near, the United States. The Rio Bravo River marks the border. Advertising hoardings praise the benefits of the US. But for most people here, the border is an insurmountable barrier. Despite the presence of the Border Patrol, a lot of migrants try to reach the US through the frontier city of Nuevo Laredo because there are no meters-high steel fences as there are further west. We can hardly believe our eyes when we see a group of men heading for the river in broad daylight in front of our camera. We watch the men as they wade across to the opposite bank. With their goal in sight, some of them run straight into the arms of the border police. One of the men is constantly on the phone. Probably he's talking to a coyote, a trafficker who is waiting for them nearby. Finally, the men disappear into a pipe. But we are fairly certain that the border guards have already spotted them. Nearby, we notice a young boy. The last few months have seen more and more children trying to cross the border alone. When we talk to him, he first tells us he's 19, but he's actually only 17. His name is Marco. He's from Honduras, and once he starts to trust us, he seems happy to have someone to confide in. He is on his own and has been since he left home 3 months ago. The journey's dangerous, Marco says. After a few days on the freight train, you're exhausted. Everything is dirty. They threw one man off the train's roof. I'm sure he died. Another fell onto the tracks and the train cut off one of his legs. I'm sad. I miss my family and I think about them a lot. I have to get to the USA. I want to earn money there and send it to my family in Honduras. At any one time in Nuevo Laredo, thousands are waiting for a chance to get across the border. A few hundred of them find a bed and a warm meal for a few nights with church-run charities. They all have terrible stories to tell. They stole everything from me on the train, this man says, my shoes and money, and then they threw me off. I was dragged behind the train, and the gravel on the tracks tore both my feet. My right foot is permanently damaged, and one toe is missing. In El Salvador, where I'm from, says this man, whose name is Carlos, family is everything. The border guards put my wife in jail along with our baby and put my 3-year-old daughter into a home. It's terrible being separated from them. Carlos is still free and will try to reach the US, but his family will be deported. We promised to look for his daughter Maybelline in the children's home. We meet dozens of minors locked in and waiting to be deported. Most of them were trying to immigrate on their own. Some of them handed themselves in voluntarily, exhausted and ready to be sent back home. But we find little Maybelline, and later we will tell Carlos that his daughter is healthy and well. The older children are all disillusioned. They dared to dream of a new life, and now will have to go back to the countries they wanted to escape. If they catch you here, this boy says, just one step away from where you want to be, it feels really bad. They're sending me back, but I'll try again. I've invested a lot to get here, and now this. Some have had no contact with their families since they left home. My parents have no idea where I am, this young man says, and they don't have any money to look for me. Back in Honduras, most of the children we met in Mexico come from here. Some of the mothers have banded together to search for their children. Some of them have had no contact in years. My sister is living without papers in the United States. She told my son to come and that she would help him, so he went. But he never turned up. Jose is one of the returnees. He too was on the Beast, the Mexican freight train. But he fell between two cars when he was asleep and lost an arm. His other hand was crushed. He's lucky to be alive. Someone found him and brought him to hospital, but he's had to bury his dreams. I had a girlfriend, Jose says. I played football and guitar, and then I came back like this. I left with the illusion of being able to help my family later, and I came back as a burden on them. Now Jose advises other young people to stay in Honduras and try and build a life here, even if the situation in the country is not one that entices them to stay. On our trip, he is the only person we have met who would not leave immediately if the chance presented itself, despite all the dangers and the bad experiences that people trying to flee have had. It's like this, Juan says. As soon as we can, we will set off again to try our luck in the US. Anyone who says you can be happy in Honduras is not telling the truth.